Good evening, everyone. I'm Councillor Paul Murray, Deputy Mayor of Strathbogie Shire Council, and I wish to welcome you to tonight's meeting. I'm chairing the meeting tonight as our Mayor, Councillor Laura Binks, is in Canberra attending the Australian Local Government Assembly. The Mayor, Councillor Andrews and Councillor Hayes-Burke are all joining us virtually. Mayor Binks is unable to chair the meeting given she is not in the room, and it is very difficult to run such a meeting remotely. I wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the place we live, work and play. We recognise and respect the enduring relationship they have with their lands and waters, and we pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging. Today we are meeting on the lands of the Taungurung people in the Eastern Kulin Nation, whose sovereignty here has never been ceded. It is with pleasure that we again welcome community members, although we haven't got actually any in the gallery tonight, so that's a little bit disappointing, but it is a very cold night, and I appreciate the fact that it's probably much better to sit at home and watch us online. We are still socially distancing here and following good hygiene practices that are required at the current COVID regulations. I also wish to welcome all of those people who are watching the live stream meeting via our website. And I wanted to take the opportunity to outline that voting at today's meeting will be held by a show of hands. If a councillor has a conflict of interest in any matter, they will be asked to leave the meeting, and no discussion on that matter will commence until we are sure that they have done so. Councillors will be contacted to rejoin the meeting after the matter has been considered and the vote concluded. CEO Solomon, are there any apologies?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, no, there are no apologies for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Councillors, are there any disclosures of conflict of interest to be made under Rule 94 of our Governance Rules and Division 2 of the Local Government Act 2020? Christy.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I wish to declare a conflict of interest to item number 9.4.2 regarding the council plan update due to a material conflict of interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Are there any other conflicts of interest to be declared? That being said, we go on to the confirmation of minutes from previous meetings. Councillors, the minutes from the ordinary council meeting 11th of May 2022 and the minutes of the extraordinary council meeting of the 7th of June 2022 require some confirmation. Can I have a motion, please, from the councillors? Moved. Councillor Rayburn. A seconder? Councillor Dickinson. Councillors, I put the motion to the vote. Are all those in favour? All those against? I declare the motion carried. CEO Solomon, do we have any petitions to be tabled for this evening?
Yes, and through you, Deputy Mayor, we have received a petition submitted by Brent Gilliand from the Parent Association for the Nagambie Preschool and Childcare Centre. The petition seeks Council's commitment to undertake a speed limit review with an associated application to Vic Roads requesting a permanent fixed speed reduction of 40 kilometres per hour. The petitioners also request the Shire investigate the possibility of installing a pedestrian walkway from the corner of Ross and Vale Streets to the preschool to improve pedestrian safety. The petition has 275 signatures, 96 of which have a postcode within the Shire's boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Councillors, can I have a motion to receive and note the petition and refer that to the CEO for consideration and response, please? Moved, Councillor Dickinson, and seconded, Councillor Horrigan. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Item 7 is the reports from Mayor and Councillors and Delegates for the last month. I might start tonight and just give my report to Council. During the month of June 2022, I've attended a number of meetings. The Municipal Association of Victoria Rural and Regional Planning Conference in Torquay, and I note that Councillor Horrigan might speak about that in more detail in her report. I also attended the Euroa Rockies Bridge sausage sizzle at the Sevens Creek community consultation morning, which went very well, and I thank all those involved in that day. The Euroa Feet on the Street walking workshop I also attended. The Euroa the Longwood Welcome to Winter Barbecue, the Euroa Historical Society meeting during that month, and the Avenel Active Annual General Meeting as well. I also attended my regular Friday evening sessions at Avenel, at the Avenel Daily Dose, the Winter Wonderland ice skating, which we were involved in with the local Chamber of Commerce. I attended that in Euroa, and Euroa Health special screening of Ruby's Choice I attended. This month, Council have launched a new initiative called Talk to the Planner. This initiative will see council town planners hit the road and make themselves available in townships across the municipality to offer advice and information and seek feedback on the current planning scheme review. Members of the community can book in a time and speak to the planners, who can provide advice and information on the local planning scheme and the state planning policy. We will also be seeking feedback on community planning priorities and how we can improve the local planning policy to better meet the community needs. We're going to every town in the Shire in July, so head to www.sharestrathbogie.vic.gov.au to learn more and book a time to talk to your planner. If you haven't already heard, Council is telling everyone that we're ready, willing and able to host the rowing event in Lake Nagambie in 2026 at the Commonwealth Games, so we're looking forward to that. Council is advocating to the Victorian Government to be at first have rowing included as a sport, and then perhaps more importantly for our Shire, to have it hosted at the Nagambie Lakes Regatta Centre. Although rowing is an optional Commonwealth Games sport, it's one of Australia's oldest and most successful sports, and we believe that Nagambie Lakes Regatta Centre provides a perfect place for this event. If you're keen to help Council's Games bid, then head to our website and click on the Council Advocacy Bring Rowing to Lake Nagambie link. Here you'll find a pro forma letter to support us and to send to the Victorian Government with some social media to share. While we're talking about advocacy, don't forget to show your support for the Greening Euroa project, which is an innovative community-driven project to use recycled water to irrigate public green spaces during the summer months here in Euroa. It's the first of its kind in Victoria. It's climate smart, cost efficient and community inspired. And our Councillor Hayes-Burke is our representative there, and she might mention it. For Euroa Township, the Greening Euroa project will keep our ovals and our sporting fields and parks and gardens green during the summer months using our recycled water. To make the project a reality, we need $3.8 million in funding from the state and federal government in grants for water infrastructure and innovation, or the equivalent in a co-contribution agreement. You can help us by sending a message to potential funders, and this project is no-brainer by visiting our website and share on a social media post or sending a template letter of support. And finally, applications for this year's Community Grants program opened on June the 1st, a couple of weeks ago, and they will close on June the 30th. So I would really encourage community groups to get involved and to make an application in the next week or two. For more information, you can visit our website. Councillors, would you like to make any reports? Councillor Rayburn.
Just one report is that I was actually meant to be in Canberra with the Mayor this weekend, the last couple of days, but due to the fact that there's no politicians in Canberra, I thought it was warranted to be up there at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Councillor Dickinson, have you got a report for us?
Your Honour. Just reiterating on the ice skating, it was held in both Euroa and Nagambie, and I did go down and have a look a couple of times, and it was pretty well used, and I only heard positive feedback about that. So that was a terrific event that was put on by the Shire and by Go Nagambie. And then last Friday, I attended the men's healthcare breakfast that was put on by Nagambie Healthcare. By my estimation, there would have been over 100 people in attendance. It was chaired by our very own Councillor Dave Andrews, did a terrific job. We had a couple of terrific guest speakers, Nathan Burke, the former St Kilda footballer and now the current coach of the Western Bulldogs ladies team. And that night he also co-compared the Spuds night game between Essendon and St Kilda. Peter Strange was another men's healthcare worker from Bendigo who gave a terrific talk about how men can look after themselves, and then I gave a fantastic speech as well, but we won't go into that. Finally, I'd just like to mention a former councillor, Rhonda Richards. Rhonda is one of those quiet achievers, one of those volunteers that is always there, always ready to put up her hand. Well, she has recently been served the honour of 2022 Queen's Birthday Honours and an Order of Australia. She's our unsung volunteer, a great community worker for over 47 years in Nagambie. She has served in positions of Treasurer, Secretary and President, a committee member. She's got life membership of the golf club and the netball club. She was a councillor from 2003 to 2008 and 14 years on the Nagambie Primary School Committee. Rhonda, if you're listening, maybe you are, you're a great human being. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Councillor Horrigan, would you have a report for tomorrow?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I do have a report. So it has been a busy month. So we started off in the midst of Volunteers Week. So I attended the Third Age Club in Euroa to celebrate the Volunteers Week there, and that was very good. We had Jimmy Davison putting on a show and a few other locals as well, so it was a bit of a song and dance, which was brilliant. I very much enjoyed that. We had the reopening of the Euroa Cinema, which I attended also, and the Euroa Cinema Strathbogie Shire Council received $130,000 from the Victorian Government, which was to renew the wooden floorboards, ventilation, painting, drapes and install new contemporary seating. And that reopening was during this last month, and the volunteers did a remarkable job setting all that up. We had the Euroa Secondary College there, the band playing on entrance, and we had the big red carpet rolled out for everyone. We had our fellow councillors attend, Councillor Dickinson, Councillor Rayburn and Councillor Andrews. And it was great. It was a really good movie night, and we did some short films, etc. So I thought that was brilliant. We had the Euroa Feet on the Street event that councillors were invited to on the Friday night. And then subsequently the community was invited to on the Saturday, which was the same day that we had the Rockies Bridge that you attended. So I attended on the Friday night, and the Friday night in particular was very good. It was a presentation in one of the shop fronts, and it was a really good discussion with business owners and councillors, and also the Chamber of Commerce were there. So on the Friday night it was a very good discussion. What else have I done this month? I attended the ice skating in Euroa as well with my daughters, and that was fun. That was a lot of fun. So thank you to the councillors put that together, and I do believe also Euroa Chamber were involved in that. And it was really well planning by everyone, really well comms on it as well, and engagement, and it drew a crowd and it was booked out. So it was a brilliant weekend, and unlike Nagambie, we got the sunshine. So we were extra lucky, which was great. Thank you. Yeah, you got the snow. Absolutely. But my highlight for the month is I attended with yourself the 2022 Rural and Regional Planning Conference in Torquay, and that was at the start of June. The conference key themes were transformation and change in rural and regional Victoria, traditional owners and the connection to country, housing rural and regional Victorians for more equitable communities, protecting and enhancing Victoria's distinctive landscapes and natural resources, and planning for resilient and thriving rural communities. So I'd like to thank it was the Surf Coast Shire that we were in, and I'd like to thank them for having us, and they presented 2 different speeches to us, which I found very interesting, that they are facing similar issues to us, but obviously being 3 hours away from us. I'll speak a bit about the highlights myself. So the conference started off brilliantly with Simon, also known as the numbers guy. His presentation was engaging and very interesting. Simon is German, and he likes to say that he's German, and he presented a lot of demographics and a lot of numbers, and he talked a lot about trends and working from home and COVID and war and how that's affecting and impacting regional towns and their communities. So we spoke a lot about when COVID hit and the war and things like that, people from Melbourne moved regionally a lot more than normal, and how those trends were affecting or are affecting now our communities with the housing crisis. And as we all know, all the housing prices have gone up, so now how a first home buyer is supposed to get in, and the rental shortages, etc. Next, we heard from the Department of Water, Environment, Land and Planning and Agriculture Victoria, who discussed their priorities for rural and regional Victoria, as well as the question and answer time, which was more beneficial and more specific. And that's where we got to ask all different questions regarding our regions, but it all morphed into we were all asking the same questions, which was really good. And Jane was talking, and she's from Department of Water, Environmental, Land and Planning. She was talking a lot about the new pilot program that they're doing, where they're looking at, I think it's 10 different regional towns to go in and look at different housing that they can do, which was a highlight. We heard from VCAT and we heard from PPV, and that was interesting hearing about cases that are coming forward. Whilst they couldn't go into detail, they did give us a little bit of an overview. And we, determined some learnings from these. There was a lot of talk about wind farms, which I found quite interesting through all different shires. I won't go into that now, controversial. The next day, we heard from the Surf Coast Shire and the challenges they're facing with housing and housing affordability. They gave us some insightful figures and different trials that they will be trialling to tackle the housing crisis. One I found quite interesting is that 25% of their properties now are to short-term rentals, so your Airbnbs and your stays. And when I asked the question, are they looking at governing it, the answer was no. So interesting what's going to come out of that. Overall, we heard lots of stories and trials from different shires regarding planning and the issues we're facing. The conference enhanced my knowledge and understanding regarding planning and developments around regional planning. It was important to see what other shires' challenges were and hearing their ideas and different trials that they're going with it. And the conference overall will benefit or has, furthered my understanding around planning, which wasn't all that much before I went, and the state where we're heading when we're making decisions in the future. So thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Councillor Hayes-Burke, have you got a report for us this month?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Thanks to all the other councillors for their reports. I'm sorry for the noise in the background of my family. And also thanks for letting me attend remotely to ensure that I don't spread my germs to you all. Thanks for that insight into your the planning conference that you attended, Councillor Horrigan, and we'll be sure to hit you up for some more information on what you discussed. It sounded really valuable. I also attended the Winter Wonderland event and have only had fabulous feedback. My daughter is convinced that that's the way to go ice skating. She's not interested in trying the real ice, so that was a good thing. The Rocky's Barbecue was a real success, which was followed by the Feed on the Street event, which I want to just thank Design Euroa for bringing Gilbert from Village Well here, because I think it was just a fabulous way for the community to generate ideas, to make Euroa a more vibrant place. And people came out despite the rain and shared all their fabulous ideas. One that I really loved was teacup rides on Binney Street. There's so much potential within the community to do even more great things than they already do. So thanks a lot for that event. And if you want to get involved with some of their projects, you can follow them on the Facebook, I believe. I also attended the local Australian Local Government Women's Association conference. It was brilliantly hosted by the Greater Shepparton City Council. I'm going to give a more detailed update on that one next council meeting. And lastly, I'd just like to thank all the community members for participating in the discussion around the 26th of Jan and how council celebrates that in the future. All submitters, I just want to ensure you that your views will be heard by all councillors, and that they will be taken into consideration when councillors make a decision next week. So I would encourage the community to attend that meeting in person, or they can tune in remotely. But the engagement, I guess, is just one thing that we'll take into consideration when we make a decision on that. There's other things that we need to take into consideration, being the MOU we have with Taungurung Land and Water Council, our community vision, the council plan, and the Local Government Act. So there's lots of different factors that will come into that, and it will be a tricky one. And I don't think I need to say anything else. Oh, the Greening Euroa project, you gave that a really good plug. Thanks, Deputy Mayor.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Andrews, would you like to say anything about your report this month?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think Councillor Dickinson's covered it all, so thank you very much.
And lastly, Mayor Binks, would you like to say a few words about your trip to Canberra and other things?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray, and thank you for chairing this meeting whilst I attend remotely. It's a really great opportunity of this hybrid model and allows me to be at this really important conference, but also not miss this really important meeting, which includes the next year's budget. So I really appreciate the ability of that and your willingness to take it on. The conference has been full on and amazing so far. I will give a detailed report when I am back and have processed it. I have pages and pages in my iPad of notes, but it's been an incredible opportunity both to hear from the new government as to their commitment to truly partnering with local government. There's a commitment from them. They have a inner cabinet minister for local government in Catherine King and an outer minister in Christy McBain as well. So there's a real commitment from this government to put focus back on local government. They understand that we are at the coalface of community, that we deal with really important stuff. In fact, some people at this conference have told us, they are talking to a room of over 500 councillors and CEOs that we, in terms of value for money, in public money, we get the best bang for buck of all tiers of government, and they're really committed to supporting us in having great outcomes in our community. So partnerships is a really big theme of this conference, and through that, both in the conference forum, but also in the interstitial conversations that you have with other councillors and CEOs from right around Australia, and understanding that they're struggling with similar struggles that we have, especially around getting contractors to tender for jobs, or having staff available for council staff for all the roles that council needs to fill, to being able to access and get plant equipment to be able to do all the things we do. So there's a lot of commonality, and then there's also lots of great opportunities and similarities in things that we are achieving. And it's been a really interesting and incredibly beneficial experience. So I shall update both council and councillors and the community more on my return, and once I've formed a formal report. But so far going well, doing lots of advocacy for Strathbogie, meeting lots of people who hopefully will be able to make some contributions to our Shire and how we can forward our projects and make some great decisions. So yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Biggs, for that report. Item 8, public question time. CEO Solomon, are there any questions for the public this evening?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you, yes, we have several questions relating to items on the agenda tonight. The first one is from Luke Downing, who asks, does Strathbogie Shire Council have any reporting available on the outcomes of the state public health mandates on its human rights obligations? So thank you for your question, Luke. Your question relates to the public health orders made by the Chief Health Officer and then the Minister for Health in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I can provide a general answer around this issue, given that it is a state government matter that you raise. As with all public health decisions made in response to the unprecedented pandemic, the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006 requires major policy decisions to be informed by a review of the implications of the policy on human rights as set out in the Charter. The Charter recognises that sometimes policy decisions must be made that may or will impinge on human rights, given the broader public health and wellbeing objectives. Further information on the state's deliberation around public health orders can be found on the Department of Health and coronavirus websites. Council also has a mandatory vaccination policy in place in response to the state government orders, which was developed in consultation with our staff. The policy has been amended in recent months to reflect that the fact that vaccination checks for visitors to our facilities are no longer required. We'll also review and update the policy in light of the weekend's announcements by the Minister for Health. Thank you for your question, Luke. Our next question has been submitted by the Rainbow Local Government team, who ask, will Council fly the Rainbow Pride flag on International Day against homophobia, biphobia and transphobia? In response to your question, and thank you, this International Day of Recognition occurred on the date of our last council meeting in May and was recognised by the Mayor in her report to Council at the start of the meeting. You will see that our council plan is proposed to be amended, pending its adoption tonight, to recognise the need for more initiatives to acknowledge this day. So thank you for your question. Our next two questions were submitted by Frank York, whose questions are, firstly, what evidence does Council have that an expensive rebranding exercise will achieve any of the stated objectives, particularly around tourism and economic development? And Frank's second question, how much money has been spent to date on this activity and how much more has been allocated to conduct this rebranding exercise? Thank you for your questions, Frank, and I would just like to acknowledge that due to a technical glitch with our computer systems last month, we did not answer these questions at the May meeting, hence we are answering them tonight, and I do apologise, and Frank, please be assured that that glitch has now been resolved. So in response to your questions, Frank, the brand renewal was included as an action in the council plan after our biggest and most comprehensive community engagement plan to deliver the community vision and the council plan. The brand renewal was included as an action in our draft council plan under Strategic Focus Area 1, Engage, Create, Unite. And this action has now been completed through the introduction of new branding for our organisation. The aim of the new brand is to provide a more consistent, professional and innovative approach to branding and marketing to strengthen our corporate identity. The rebranding strategy was prepared by highly qualified Shire employees. No external consultants were paid to undertake this work. And in response to your second question, there has been no, as I said, there has been no funding allocated to date, but there is funding allocated in the budget of $60,000 to upgrade Shire and town entry signage. Thank you for your questions, Frank.
Thank you very much. We move now to item 9, which are the officers' reports, and item 9.1.1, planning applications received and planning applications determined from the 1st to the 31st of May 2022. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. On page 1 of the agenda, the report talks about council planning applications that have been received and determined for the period of 1 to the 31st of May 2022. During this time, we received 13 new planning permit applications and 18 planning permit applications were decided upon. There is a recommendation on page 1 for council's consideration. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, we do not have any submitters wishing to speak to this item this afternoon. So can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Is there a mover to the motion? Councillor Dickinson.
I would like to move the motion as stated on page 1 of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Rayburn. Can I ask the mover now if they wish to speak to their motion?
No.
No? Can I ask the seconder if they wish to speak to their motion? Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? If not, I'll put the motion. But before I do, does the mover wish to have their right of reply, despite the fact that there's been no speaker against? Good. Councillors, I'll put the motion for the vote. Those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. We move on now to item 9.2.1, which is the Greytown Community Action Plan 2021 to 2025. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of the report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. Greytown Community Action Plan was developed by the Greytown community. The action group undertook an engagement process with the community to inform its development. The action plan focuses on key 4 priorities for that community, including communication and community engagement, history and heritage, maintaining the hub, and administration and training. The action group's community plan is presented to council for noting as part of council's community planning program. There is a recommendation on page 9 of the agenda for council's consideration. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? If not, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what the motion is? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that the recommendation, page 9 of the agenda, be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Can I have a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Mayor Binks. Can I ask the mover to speak if they wish to speak for the motion? Councillor Andrews?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I think the Greytown Community Incorporated need to be commended on their communication and engagement of their community, and also the heritage and history they're maintaining there, and I give them my full support. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. The seconder, does the seconder wish to speak, or would they like to reserve their right?
No, I'll speak. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. I'd like to second Councillor Andrews' comments and commend the community on forming these important documents. They do take time and commitment from community, and we really recognise your commitment to doing that within your community. We've just had volunteer week, as Councillor Hourigan mentioned, and our volunteers in these groups are really vital to assisting council in understanding what are the priorities in your communities and helping us to help you. So I really thank you for your commitment to the community and in such to council.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Have I got a speaker against the motion? Does any councillor wish to speak in favour of the motion? Does Councillor Horrigan?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So thank you to the Greytown Community Incorporated for putting together the Greytown Community Plan. It's inspiring when communities develop plans for their regions. And so I think it's important that I speak to the motion. And we would welcome future submissions from Greytown Community Incorporated in the relevant grant programs to help them complete their plans as well.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Would the mover wish to a right of reply? Thank you, Councillor Andrews. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. We move on now to item 9.2.2, Euroa Community Action Group Strategic Plan 2022 to 2025. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. The Euroa Community Action Group have also been busy developing their Euroa Community Action Group strategic plan. The key goals in the plan are community driving positive action together, strong community inclusion and wellbeing, thriving natural and physical spaces and destinations for arts and culture. The group recently undertook consultation through a variety of platforms to inform its development. There is a recommendation on page 13 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? That being the case, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I wish to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 13 of the agenda, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have a second of the motion? Councillor Dickinson. Can I ask the mover if they wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I too would like to thank the Euroa Community Action Group for the creation of their strategic plan. The strategic plan created by, we call it ECAG, is empowering and it's very well detailed. And I too would welcome, or we would all welcome, future submissions for the relevant grant programs so that we can also help them complete their strategic plan. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there any speaker who wishes to speak against the motion? Would the mover like the right of reply? No? Seconder? I didn't offer it to you, but the seconder
was me.
The motion, Councillor Dickinson?
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to the motion?
I just want to say I support Councillor Horrigan's motion, and I want to compliment the Euroa Action Group on the work that went into this plan. They take a long time, they take a lot of work, and it's a real community effort, so well done to those people.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hayes-Burke, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to congratulate the community of Greytown and Euroa for putting together their action plan. So for us tonight, and the purpose of tonight is to sorry, it's very echoey. The purpose of tonight is for us to note these in order to provide opportunities to provide funding for these groups. Sadly, it doesn't mean that all the actions in these plans will be met by council, but it does provide an opportunity for funding, and we look forward to helping these groups. Thank you.
Councillor Horrigan, do you wish to reply? No. Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. We move now to 9.2.3, adoption of our sponsorship program guidelines for 2022-2023. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. This report seeks to update Council's current sponsorship program guidelines for the 2022-2023 period. Minor amendments are proposed to the guidelines, including clarity around decision-making and timeframe requirements, updating to wording around GST, and also some updating of some hyperlinks as well. Also strengthened within the guidelines is around environmental considerations, given that Council has declared a climate emergency recently. There is a recommendation on page 17 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? In that case, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hourigan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I wish to move a motion that we adopt the recommendation on page 17 of the agenda. Thanks.
Seconder for the motion? Councillor Mayor Binks, thank you. Does the seconder wish to speak to the motion or reserve their right? Does the mover wish to speak to their motion?
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Sponsorship. So I know this is a sponsorship guideline update, but sponsorships are very important for the community. So I'm very excited that we've updated these guidelines for the next year, and it's on file for all to see for when they're applying. And we have allocated a total amount of $30,000 towards the guidelines. Thanks.
Mayor Binks, as seconder, would you wish to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
I need to second Councillor Hourigan's comments and to thank the officers for making those updates to clarify those matters and ensuring we've got a really great piece of policy, a guideline to use that everyone is able to understand and use. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? If not, does any councillor wish to speak further to the motion, in support of the motion? I ask the mover if they would like to sum up. No? That being the case, I put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. We now move on to item 9.2.4, Draft Public Art Policy. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. This report presents the draft public art policy to Council and requests Council endorse the public consultation on the draft policy. Arts and culture is a theme that's really strong in our community. The policy has been drafted to provide a clear and transparent process for assessing and making decisions about the design, placement and preservation of art in public spaces throughout our Shire. The policy also incorporates a Part 2 component that details the process associated with the application of the actual policy. Consultation has already been held with the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee, with further broader community consultation to be undertaken on this policy should it be supported by Council tonight, and that would be through a range of different platforms. There is a recommendation on page 22 for Council's consideration. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? That being the case, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Binks, moved. Can you state what the motion is?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. I move that the motion be adopted as per the recommendation on page 22 of the agenda.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Binks. Can I have a second of the motion, please? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Does the mover wish to speak for the motion?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is a really important piece of policy. We've seen in all of our engagement since coming onto council that public art is really important for our community. We saw it in our conversations that we had out in the community last year when we were engaging on our council plan. And we also saw it in the incredible number of applications that we had come through for our Pitch My Project budget submissions this year for this coming 2022 to 2023 budget. So to be able to fund these, really fabulous arts projects, it's really important that we have strong policy that enables us to do so in a transparent and good governance manner. So I'm really excited to see that this policy has been adopted, and I really commend it to my fellow councillors tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Does the seconder wish to speak to the motion or reserve their right?
I'll speak to it. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I concur with Mayor Binks's comments, and I hope this is a really exciting piece of policy for local artists as well. But I think it's a really great step in the right direction for council, and I'm looking forward to hearing what the community feedback is on it. And I'm sure that they'll give us some great input because they're clearly passionate about this area. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Is there any councillor who wishes to speak against the motion? That being the case, does the mover wish to reply?
Does anyone else want to speak?
Does anybody else wish to speak for the motion? Does the mover wish to reply now? Thank you. Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. We now move on to item 9.3.1, tender for contract number 212207, design and supply of chlorination system municipal outdoor pools. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. This project is required to make the necessary upgrades to the chlorination systems for our 4 outdoor pools within the Shire to ensure that they are safe, they're sustainable and they're providing a high quality outdoor pool. This project forms part of Council's 2021-2022 Capital Works budget. At the close of tender advertising period, 3 tenders were received by 2 tenderers, 2 tenders compliant with the specification and 1 alternative tender was provided offering an upgrade on a filtration specification. Following the assessment process, it is recommended to award the tender to Eco Plunge Pools Proprietary Limited. There is a recommendation commencing on page 27 of the agenda for Council's consideration. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? Mayor Binks?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. Director Tingay, I just wanted to understand a little bit further the requirements of these coming as a, an automated system as opposed to being one that that could be done perhaps by staff at these facilities.
Thank you, Mayor Binks, for that question. There was an audit undertaken in 2016 and then also subsequently an inspection in September 2020 in regards to our outdoor pools, so they being Avenel, Nagambie, Euroa and Barlett Town. The results of those audits indicated that basically our system didn't meet OH&S requirements and required an upgrade. So essentially the project has been to design and supply new chlorination systems for all our 4 pools to make sure that they are safe, to reduce manual handling, which is what's happening now, and to provide a more updated system for our local pools. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Any further questions of our officers? One further question, Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you. Just a cost differentiation between doing it manually or doing it automatically. Has that been looked at? Thank
you, Councillor Dickinson. I think the main concern from from this project is around the safety and the upgrade of the system to ensure that we're compliant with today's standards. One of the things that I've just sort of spoke about is there's a manual handling of the chemical that's occurring, and that's something that certainly is not recommended or suggested in today's OH&S world. So this is in the budget, and it will also provide, I guess, a safer workplace for those that are handling and running the systems and the pools.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions for the officer? If not, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what the motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that the recommendation printed on page 27 be adopted by Council. Thanks.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Hayes-Burke. Can I ask the mover if they wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is very important for our communities. The pools are a big part of our community, and to have a better operation of our community pools in the fact that the chlorination, when it's all done by manual, it's done when the staff come on duty at 11 o'clock and then we've got people coming in at 12, 1 o'clock to use the pool. Under this new system, the pools will be self-chlorinated during the evening or very early in the morning, so therefore all the chlorination and all the chlorine will be dissolved into the water, which is going to make it a lot safer for our residents and visitors to be able to use the pools.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Does the seconder wish to speak to the motion or reserve their right?
That's okay, thanks. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Rayburn. It's not the safety of the staff is incredibly important, but it's also going to improve the safety for all the residents. So, yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. Thank you.
Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Does any councillor wish to speak further in support of the motion? In that case, does the mover wish to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. We now move to item 9.3.2, tender for contracts number 2122-33, provision of wet and dry hire suppliers, panel suppliers. Director Tingay, can we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. I'm handballing that to Director Roth for his summary. Thank you.
Director Tingay, Director Roth.
I gratefully received the handball, thank you. From time to time, Council has a need to hire equipment with or without an operator to supplement our own plant and equipment. So this process has called for expressions of interest for contractors willing to provide those. And as you'll see, there was a good response. We were looking at a 3-year agreement. We'll still have to obtain quotes from the contractors before we actually proceed with the work. This process just saves us a lot of time and effort because we've done a lot of the hard paperwork early. So we're recommending a panel of suppliers that we'll be able to use as and when required.
Thank you, Director Roth. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? That being the case, I'm glad you've clarified what wet and dry means in terms of operators either working on it or not or whatever. So you learn something every day. Councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what the motion is? Mayor Binks? Can you state what the motion is, please?
Thank you. Yes, just finding my unmute button. I would like to move that the motion be adopted as written on page, I think it is 35 of our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second of the motion? Councillor Rayburn? Can I ask the mover if they wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Deputy Mayor Murray, just to say that this panel of suppliers model is really beneficial for the organisation. It does, as Director Roth mentioned, it takes away some of that additional initial hard work and gives us a panel of suppliers to go out to when we need to employ these services. It's also really great to see on that list quite a lengthy list of local suppliers, and councillors, you will note we changed our procurement methods recently to try and increase local suppliers. So really great to see a high list of local suppliers in our list, and it's just a really great way to help manage the services that we provide, but also how to do that in an economically viable manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. Councillor Rayburn, as the seconder, would you wish to speak for the motion or reserve your right? Thank you.
I'll speak. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I have to support the Mayor's comments 100%. It's great to have this panel available because due to lately we've been having a lot of sickness in our organisation, and it's good to be able to arrange to have some of these companies come in and fill the gap while we're low on staff, and it meets our requirement to try and service our community much better and much quicker and much cheaper. Thanks.
Is there any councillors who wish to speak against the motion? Any councillor who wish to speak further in support of the motion? Then I ask the mover if they wish to sum up. No? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. We move on now to item 9.3.3, contracts and works awarded under delegation. Director Tingay, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. This report details the publicly advertised tenders and also tenders that have been invited for written quotations that are awarded by either the CEO, directors or a manager under delegation. We've highlighted one throughout the period of the 1st of May through to the 31st of May, and that being our after hours on-call system, of which we have centralised. The contract details for that particular contract is 2 years with a 1+1 extension, and obviously that is performance based as well. There is a recommendation on page 42 for Council's consideration. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Murray.
Thank you, Director Tingay. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? No, that being the case, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what the motion is? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks. I wish to move the recommendation of page 42 of the agenda.
Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Horrigan. The mover wish to speak for the motion.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to say I think that this after hours call handling service, that's one of the contracts that's been awarded, will be met with a great relief from officers, and I think it's an example of how we're continually trying to improve the services that we offer the community.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Would the seconder wish to speak or reserve their right? No? Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Is there any further speakers in favour of the motion? Then I ask the mover if they wish their right of reply. No? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. We now move on to item 9.3.4, adoption of the Strathbogie Shire Council Asset Plan. Director Roth, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So the asset plan is a requirement of the Local Government Act. So we're required to produce one, and what it will do is demonstrate how we're going to look after our asset base, which if in the report you'll note we have assets of value of about $238 million ranging from buildings, plant and equipment, through to the infrastructure assets of roads, bridges, drains, footpaths and items like that. It also contains some data about proposed operating and capital expenditure, which we then try and compare with the rate at which the assets are deteriorating to see that we're funding those. And there is further work going on to look at our actual system. We've just had an audit done of our processes so we can get some improvement opportunities. We've acquired additional software so we can model the condition of our assets. And you'll note in here there are a number of graphs which identify the state of our assets, particularly sealed roads, unsealed roads, footpaths. We currently are waiting on a final report. That assessment gets done every 3 or so years. The last one in this report was 2017. We now have a draft report. We'll get a final report which will update the figures, and what we said in the recommendation is that we note that we will update the figures when we get the latest condition assessment, and then that becomes the basis on which we then look to maintain the asset base. So there were no submissions received on the asset plan, so it's recommended for council to adopt it, subject to us updating the figures when we get the final condition assessments.
Thank you, Director Roff. Councillors, is there any questions of the officer? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Director Roff, do you think that the outcome of the current audit will be positive in relation to the roads sealed and unsealed parts?
The audit, through you, Deputy Mayor, the audit looks at a number of different angles. It's like our budgeting and then our service levels, and there's about 10 criteria it looks at. Some of them we perform reasonably well, and others we need to have some improvements made, which is part of the reason why we're doing it, so we can get an honest appraisal of where we're at. Within the asset plan, you'll note that the numbers of the cost of depreciation, etc., is roughly equal to what we're spending, so we're not in too bad a position. And if you look in the graphs of the condition assessments, generally we rate assets between condition 0, which is brand new, and condition 10, which has had it. So condition 8 is generally where we intervene, and you'll note in the graphs there's not a lot of assets above condition 8, particularly in the bridges area where there's been a lot of work done. So we've got a reasonably good asset base in condition terms, but there are improvements we can make to the processes that we use to maintain them, which is why we've done the audit, and we'll come up with an improvement plan to get even better at it.
Thanks, Director. And sorry, can I just ask, do you think it's a positive thing that we didn't get any community feedback on this asset plan? Is that a good thing?
Oh, I think if you ask the community if we could improve the condition of our assets, they'd probably say we could. So we'll take that on board, and that's why we're trying to improve our processes. And there's also the community satisfaction survey, which results for which haven't been produced yet, which may give us further data.
Perhaps that's a question more for the communications officer really than Director Roff. But anyway, are there any further questions of our officer? In that case, councillors, can I have a motion, please? Can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I move that the recommendation printed on page 45 be put forward and be adopted by council. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Horrigan. I ask the mover if they wish to speak to the motion.
Yes, I do. Thanks, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to compliment Director Roff on this asset plan and the staff which he has underneath him. This is the last asset plan he'll be producing for the Shire of Strathbogie, as he's retiring in 2 weeks' time. And for him to state just then that we're looking at a new audit way of going forward to try and improve our service to our community is a tribute to him and his knowledge of what is best for our community in Shire. But when you look at page 46 and you look at the sealed roads and unsealed roads, you know, we've got 1,469 kilometres of unsealed road. To me, it's just a lot of dirt which we have to grade and look after and service for our community. And at the moment, due to the wet weather and everything going on, our roads are not up to scratch. That's not to do with the staff. It's not to do with how things have been done. It's due to the climatic weather we're having at the moment. Luckily, we're not in Lismore or up in Queensland where they've got no roads. But and then you look at all our bridges and buildings which we look after as a Shire. We're only a very, very small Shire, but by God, we've got some bloody assets. So I just really wonder how we, in the future, we're going to be able to manage all this. And it's something which councillors in the future we're going to have to really grapple with what access we do have and require for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Does the seconder wish to speak to the motion or reserve their right? No, they don't. Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Does any other councillor wish to speak in favour of the motion? Does the mover wish to say anything further? Councillor Hayes-Burke, do you wish to speak for the motion?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd just also like to second the comments made by Councillor Rayburn and thank the team for putting together this document because, we have a huge number of assets for a small shire and this might not be the most exciting document to the community, but this is part of our core business and so the way we deal with these assets is really important. And I just acknowledge the continual work that goes into making sure that they're up to scratch. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes-Burke. Councillor Rayburn, you don't wish to speak to sum up? Thank you. Can I put the motion then? All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. We now move on to item 9.4.1, Instruments of Appointment and Authorisation Update. Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. Councillors, we have one of these periodical updates that we need to do to the Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation. We have had some vacant positions that have been filled by new staff, and we've also had some amendments to legislation which require us to appoint people to do things like infringement reviews. So this instrument updates those details and those personnel, and it also does the important things such as appoints our Municipal Emergency Management Officer and Fire Prevention Officer and reflects the changes that we've had in those roles. So, councillors, on page 51 is a recommendation that we approve the council signs and seals the authorisation instrument and that we revoke the existing one once that's signed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? That being the case, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Hayes-Burke.
Thank you. I wish to move the recommendation on page 51.
Thank you, councillor. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Rayburn. Does the mover wish to speak to the motion?
Just to thanks Director Bray for constantly keeping this updated. It must be a huge amount of work. It just shows the far-reaching mandate that council has and all the different acts which we need to be constantly across and just to ensure that we're aware of what's going on in terms of what's being updated in legislation. It's really important that this is in order and up to date. So thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Does the seconder wish to speak for the motion or reserve their right? Thank you,
I'll just speak if you don't mind, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, this documentation, this recommendation is documentation which has been put forward to council tonight, gives us as councillors peace and harmony. Because if we didn't do this, we would be sitting here 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, going through all the instrument which goes on in local government. And the poor CEO would never go home. So this is been delegation down the chain, so we as councillors and our senior executives can get on and do their job properly and allow the staff to have the power and the ability to be able to do their job completely.
Thank you, councillor. Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? If not, is there any other councillor who wishes to speak in favour of the motion? Does the mover wish to sum up? No? Then I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. Now move on to item 9.4.2, 2021 to 2025 Council Plan 2022 Update Adoption. We have a councillor who has a conflict of interest and will be stepping out, so we'll just pause for a moment. Thank you. Councillor has now exited the room. Can we, Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. Councillors, we heard a submission, or we considered a submission in response to the council plan review a couple of weeks ago. We've reviewed the plan in line with the budget to make sure it reflects the resources and the allocations that we require to keep on implementing the community vision and the actions in the council plan. So there has been a couple of changes, and the attachment marks up those changes in red. In response to the submission that we received from the Victorian Pride Lobby. And so on page 62, there's the start of a recommendation which asks council to receive and note again that submission from the Victorian Pride Lobby, and to note the fact that we're proposing some changes to the wording of an existing action under 6.1.2 to help celebrate more the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia as per the request, and certainly that was raised in a question to council earlier this evening. We've also just amended the wording of an existing action to clarify the council's role in initiatives around free camping, and to also insert the adoption of council's Gender Equity Action Plan and also a draft Climate Action Plan which is underway in the Public Health and Wellbeing Statement part of the council plan, just to make sure it reflects all of the work that we're doing at the moment so it's current and up to date and relevant. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? That being the case, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Dickinson.
I'd like to move the motion as set out on page 62 and 63.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Can I have a seconder, please? Mayor Binks. Can I ask the mover if they wish to speak to their motion?
We've come a long way. I would have said 5 years ago this wouldn't have entered people's heads, but it's good that it has. I'm all for gender equity and action. What more can be said? Onwards and upwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Can I ask the seconder if they wish to speak to the motion or reserve their right? Councillor Binks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. I'd like to thank Director Bray and team for doing this update. It's a pretty constant thing. We've got to be looking at our 4-year council plan and working out where are we up to, what needs updating and that. So I really thank you for your effort in doing that. And yeah, just I second Councillor Dickinson's comments. Onwards and upwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Does any councillor wish to speak further in support of the motion? Does the mover wish to their right to sum up? No. That being said, can I put the motion? All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. We'll invite Councillor Horrigan back into the room. Thank you. The chamber, I should call it, probably. Thank you, Councillor Horrigan, who's back in attendance. We now move to item 9.4.3, adoption of the budget, fees and charges, financial plan and the declaration of rates and charges for the 12 months ending 30th of June 2023. Director Roth, may we have a summary of your report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So there are 3 documents involved: the budget, the financial plan, which basically extends the budget over a 10-year period, and the fees and charges. So Council has now complied with the legislative requirements for the preparation of the budget. The Council report that you have has a summary of the 23 submissions that were received and the response and proposed impact for each of those. It also identifies pitch my project submissions that have been funded on page 70 of the report. Page 71, there are a number of variations that have occurred which are not really material since we had the draft budget advertised. There are a series of recommendations commencing on page 72 which enables Council to proceed to levy the rates in accordance with the budget. There are also some key financial indicators in the report, together with an outline of the community engagement that was undertaken. And the Audit and Risk Committee reviewed the budget at its meeting on the 7th of April and noted the budget, noting again that the figures are not markedly different to what are now in the final version. So the budget is there for Council's consideration and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Roth. Council, is there any questions of the officer? Councillors, in that case, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Horrigan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I wish to move the motion that we adopt the recommendation. And again, searching for page numbers. On page 72 of the agenda. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Horrigan. Is there a second to the motion? Mayor Binks?
68, there's it.
Can I ask the mover if they wish to speak for the motion?
Yes, please. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you to the officers for, again, another budget, financial plan and fees and charges for the 2022-2023 financial year. Thank you to the community for contributing to the budget, both via the Pitch My Projects and feedback on our draft budget as well. Without your input, we wouldn't have got so many fantastic projects that are in there at the moment. The 2022-2023 budget provides for 14.87 million capital works program, together with a 7.69 million carried over from the 21-22 year. In particular, I've mentioned the capital works program because I would like to celebrate a few successes in the budget, and whilst I'd like to go on and on and on, I will keep it nice and short. Thank you to the community and also to my fellow councillors who have listened again and again and again, not just from myself, but also from our community as the budget submissions keep coming in regarding a master plan and a detailed design for a nature-based playground for Euroa. So in this particular budget, we have allocated and set aside $85,000 to get this together. So thank you to all. We have also allocated $15,000 towards the Seven Creeks master plan, $20,000 for the public art installation in Euroa, and one of the biggest highlights is we have allocated in this budget $100,000 for a Shire-wide open space strategy. We did learn through COVID and thereafter that we're sick of being locked up inside, and so a lot of this money is spent in parklands and getting people outside and gathering together. So there's my highlights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horrigan. Is there the second, Councillor Mayor Binks, would you wish to speak for the motion now or reserve your right?
I'll speak to that now, please, Deputy Mayor Murray. So yes, I too want to commend this budget to fellow councillors. It's an incredible budget, and I also just want to thank all of our community that submitted both through Pitch My Project and the budget submission process, which happened when our draft budget was up for public review. Both these processes are really important for council to hear from community is what is important for you, and I do acknowledge that we haven't funded them all, and it's whilst that can be disappointing for those groups that have missed out, it is actually helping us understand which areas we might need to address down the track. For example, the public art policy that you saw earlier on in the evening was a result of applications that came in through the Pitch My Project process, because we had so many applications around getting public art in our Shire, but we didn't have any policy to support it. So this process of pitching to us what you'd like to see helps us build really strong policy so that then we can allocate our funds from our budget in a really transparent and good governance manner, which is so important for local government, for all levels of government, but especially for us because we're dealing with this one. So yeah, I'd just like to point out that whilst some people may have missed out this round, your submissions have certainly been noted, and they will inform how we form policy and strategy, and perhaps what we might be able to assist in the future to help achieve the outcomes that you're seeking and that our community is asking us for. So whilst you may not have received a grant or a budget allocation this time, it isn't an all-lose situation. And I really thank you for your time and commitment in submitting to us. And I also want to point out that it was absolutely delightful to receive a couple of thank yous in the budget submission process. I don't know if that has happened much in the past, but it was a really lovely surprise to read those submissions. So I really thank the community for taking the time to thank council. It does make a difference and we do notice it. Finally, I'd just like to thank Director Roff and the finance team for doing an incredible job of pulling such a big budget together. I know it's not a big budget, but there's lots of moving parts. We've got so many different elements that we manage. It's far more than roads, rates and rubbish. We have community projects that we deliver. We've got these Pitch My Project things. There's lots of pressure on our budget, and I think that Director Roff and his team have just done an incredible job in helping us as councillors understand where we might be able to spend that money well, and where we might need some policy, such as the public art policy, to help us spend that money well in the future. So I just really want to thank Director Roff and his team for all their work in helping us make good budget decisions.
Thank you very much, Mayor Binks. I'd like to suggest an amendment to the motion and ask the mover if it's acceptable. So I'll read the amendment and ask them. So the amendment is the council adopt the motion as the mover has suggested, but with the amendment to point 8 on page. Oh, that's a good question. 76, to adopt the fees and charges for 2022-23, but maintain the general admission fee for the Euroa Community Cinema at $10, noting that some fees, other fees may alter if set by legislation. Can I ask if that's acceptable to the mover to remain, for the price to remain at $10?
Can I just clarify? It says that some may alter, so it's not saying it is altering. So we want to pop in there that the cinema price will not alter. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's acceptable to the mover, so it becomes part of the motion. Oh, sorry, and the seconder? So the seconder, Mayor Binks, is that acceptable to you?
Yes, it's acceptable.
Thank you, Mayor Binks. So that becomes part of the motion, substantive motion. So the motion as listed in the agenda with the amendment, with the alteration that the fees remain at $10 for the cinema. Does any councillor? Oh, okay. Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? No. That being the case, does any councillor wish to speak in favour of the motion? Sally, would you? Sorry, Councillor Hayes-Burke, would you wish to speak in favour of the motion?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to second the remarks of my fellow councillors and thank the officers for the huge amount of work over months that's gone into preparing these documents. Perhaps some of the other highlights that I can just read out or ask the community to take note of in the capital works projects. We're hoping to complete the Nagambie foreshore walk and also install a biosecurity truck wash at the Euroa Sale Yards, while also completing the landfill capping at the Violet Town landfill site. And some other smaller projects which are equally important to the community include additional fencing at the Nagambie Bowls Club, the rehabilitation of the Euroa Memorial Oval, which some contributions have been received from the Memorial Oval Committee, so a contribution to master planning in Longwood, and 50% contribution to the Euroa CFA for their running track, which is in an open space, and there's also the necessary upgrades to the Strathbogie Hall. We've also allocated $100,000 over 4 years to increase the green canopy within the Shire. This is not only in line with our climate change objectives, but will also beautify our towns and neighbourhoods. And there's also more money that we will be allocating to climate actions once we have finalised the climate action plan. And I also concur that it's great to see some money allocated to designing a fabulous nature-based playground in Euroa. Just overall, we have been able to allocate $380,000 towards community-based projects through the Pitch My Project scheme. So that's really exciting for councillors, and I really hope that this budget delivers what the community hopes. Thank you.
Are there any other councillors who wish to speak on the motion? That being the case, I wish to just clarify perhaps my amendment to the motion, and just sort of to say that was in response from a community request, and some of our volunteers were a bit concerned about the $12 amount and the fact that they may have to use change for that if it was $12, and the fact that they may have to start checking concession cards and so on, and that would be much, quite difficult for them. So that's in response to that. Thank you. Are there any other speakers for the motion? Can I ask the mover, if they wish to have their right of reply? No? That being the case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. We now move on to item 9.5.1, the monthly performance report. Director Bray, may we have a summary of this report, please?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. And I think the numbers in this report in terms of building activity and planning activity just keep getting larger every time we have a meeting. And So this month, and it's, again, I stress it's not a competition, we have $4.4 million in building activity, and it's across all 5 wards in the Shire, with Hughes Creek being nearly $2 million worth of building activity, and Nagambie being nearly $1.2 million. And there's just, again, in terms of the types of things that we're seeing building permit applications for, it's really dwellings and houses and alterations and improvements to houses. In terms of planning applications determined, we've had around over $5 million worth of development approved, primarily in the Lake Nagambie ward, which was over $4 million worth. But again, in terms of totals, it certainly surpasses, I think, what we've had in the last few months. I suppose the key thing that I'd like to highlight in this report is that obviously we're getting a lot more customer requests, and certainly my customer service team are getting quite a lot of calls and service requests in relation to things like roads, potholes, and also trees, obviously. And I think we talked about this last month. The weather conditions that we're having are causing real headaches, not just for unsealed roads, but for sealed roads as well, and that's all across the state. If you drive anywhere at the moment, you'll even see that sealed roads are starting to develop fairly serious potholes. There's a series, I suppose, is a perfect storm, for want of a better phrase, in terms of the weather conditions. It's unseasonably wet, and it's likely now that they're forecasting that we'll go into another wet summer, which will make it even more challenging. We've also had comments earlier in this meeting around the difficulties around getting plant equipment and also contractors to do the work. We've also had recruiting challenges in terms of staff, and also illness through COVID and the flu. So all of these things have hit in sort of a few months, and makes it really challenging for our outdoor crews. And also I think the management team and David and his team are doing an amazing job with very short staff. We're short on materials, short on plant, and it's a very challenging situation. So I think also that the grader program is only 1 or 2 weeks behind. I know people want us to grade roads, but sometimes in these conditions, grading a road actually makes it more dangerous. So we just have to be really careful that we're looking after people's safety. So I know we're getting a lot of calls through, and I think we've had 111 service requests relating to potholes alone this month, which is a phenomenal figure. We're doing the best we can, but under very, very challenging situations. On a good note, our waste diversion efforts are up to 70% of waste is being diverted away from landfill, and our contamination rates for the community, another amazing effort by the community, it's now less than 1% again. So we've had a few blips along the way this year, but we're back on track to some amazing waste outcomes. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Director Bray. Councillors, are there any questions of the officer? That being the case, councillors, can I have a motion, please, and can you state what your motion is? Councillor Rayburn.
That I move the recommendation printed on page 86 be noted, received and noted. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Can I have a seconder, please? Mayor Binks. Can I ask the mover if they wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'd just like to actually support the Director's comments on the Shire, how we're performing at the moment. All industries and all businesses are struggling at the moment due to staff shortages and material availability and everything else, and we're trying to do the best with the ability we have at the moment. And sometimes we will upset our community in not being able to service you straight away, but we're trying our best, and always be respectful that we are trying, and that's all I can ever say.
Thank you, Councillor Rayburn. Mayor Binks, would you, as a seconder, would you like to speak to the motion or reserve your right?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Murray. Just to second Councillor Rayburn's comments and thank Director Bray and the staff for doing, or staff across the organisation for doing all they can. I know lots of people are pulling extra weight because of staff shortages and going above and beyond what they already do an amazing job. So I really want to just shout out and thank them for their continued efforts. Thanks.
Does any councillor wish to speak against the motion? Any councillor wish to speak in favour of the motion? Does the mover wish to write a reply? In that case, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? All those against? The motion's carried. Now move on to item 10, notices of motion. CEO Solomon, can you please outline any notices of motion received by you?
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor, I have not received any notices of motion for this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And notices of rescission. CEO Solomon, are there any notices of rescission?
No, through you, Deputy Mayor, no notices of rescission received.
And item 12, urgent business. CEO Solomon, are there any urgent business this evening?
No, Deputy Mayor, there is no urgent business for tonight.
Item 13, confidential business. CEO Solomon, is there any confidential business to consider?
Likewise, Deputy Mayor, none for tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CEO. Councillors, the next meeting of the Council is an extraordinary meeting of the Strathbogie Shire Council, and it's scheduled to be held on Tuesday 28th of June 2022 at the Aroa Community Conference Centre, commencing at 6 p.m, to consider submissions on the future of Council's participation in the Australia Day celebrations. The next ordinary monthly meeting of the Strathbogie Shire Council is scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 19th of July 2022 at the Aroa Community Conference Centre, commencing at 6 p.m. There being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 7:37 p.m. Thank you for your attendance, councillors. Thank you to those who are watching. Good night.